so welcome to this session of Together We Can. Today we're going to be looking at how you can do kick-ass social media. So please do use the chat box to introduce yourself. Let us know where in the UK or the world you're joining us from, any community groups you're part of. We'd love to know who's here with us today and get a chance for you to get to know each other a bit more. We are going to be recording this, so you are welcome to put your camera off if that makes you feel more comfortable. Please keep yourself on mute so that we can hear all our wonderful speakers, and we will also be using breakout rooms in this session, so we really hope that you will participate in these. And we also hope that you've all joined us on Vive, which is our new online space where Summit participants can connect and keep conversations going. And for this session, we also have a whole group on Vive called growing your groups, where you can share ideas around how to do communication and outreach effectively to grow your groups. So that's a really great one to join if you're interested in sharing learnings there. So just to introduce the Summit team on the call, I'm Rhiannon. I work for Transition Together, and I'm our communications and engagement lead. And I'm also do a lot of work supporting groups to develop and grow. Chris, who's going to be my co-facilitator, give us a wave, Chris.
Good morning. Hello.
She does all our amazing social media for us at Transition Together. And we both have, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years experience between us doing effective comms for social change. So we're really hoping to be able to share some of those learnings with you today. And we've also got Maria joining us from the Summit team. If you could give us a little wave, Maria. She's here to help with any tech support needs that you might have. Great, and we've also got the social media links in the chat there. I'm just seeing some people saying hi. Hello from Anais, hello Kaluna from Scotland, Suzanne from Wandsworth Climate Hub, Carolina from London, we've got Rosa from Stirling in Scotland. Excellent. Simon from sunny North Yorkshire, someone from Brittany in France, welcome. Great, amazing to see so many people here from both the UK. Oh, someone from the Black Isle in the Highlands, welcome everybody. Great, so to kick us off today, we wanted to do just a quick poll to get a bit of an idea about the kind of social media knowledge that you might be coming with, because that will just help us tailor the session a little bit. So Maria, if you could run the poll, we're just going to get you to let us know where you think your social media knowledge is at now, and maybe some of the challenges that you've been experiencing that have brought you along to the session today. Great, Maria, are you able to? Yeah, there we go. Cool, so yeah, just take a minute or so to fill that in. Maria, someone just asked for us to share the social media links again. If you could pop them in the chat, that would be great. All right, so we've got, see those results coming in. Just give you a few more seconds there. Yeah, lots of people coming up as intermediate. All right, almost everyone's filled it in. Great, I think we're there, Maria. Do you want to share those results for us? Okay, share the results there. Okay, cool. So we've got just one or so person coming with no skills at all, then quite a few beginners, some intermediates knowing the basics and want to improve. That's great. And then just looking at some of the challenges here. Okay, quite a mixture and a balance between the different challenges, time and skills in group, struggling to find content. Great, cool. Well, luckily, we should be covering most of that in our session today. We will also leave some time and space for questions at the end too. Great, Chris, should we move into the presentation?
Yep, just give me a moment to share my screen.
Well,
is that working? Can you see it?
yes, excellent. All right, so if you could go to the next slide. Brill. So we've got the names in the chat. Great. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to start with today, when you're thinking about doing your social media, whether you already have accounts established or you're setting up new social media accounts for a new group, the first thing to get really clear on is your audience and the language you're going to use and the framing that you're going to use. So we're going to look at that in the first half of this session. And then in the second half of the session, we're going to go on to giving you some practical tools and tips for using the different social media platforms. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is audience. Next slide, please, Chris. So before you do anything, the first thing that you want to understand when you're starting social media is who are the people that you want to communicate with. So what we're going to do in a second is get you to go into breakout rooms. We're going to do a little interactive exercise. Because you need to be identifying the kind of people that you want to be reaching out to through your social media. So what are their age, what are their interests, gender, sexuality, race, religion, life situation, all of these different things. Understanding who your audience is will help you make a decision about the kind of channels that you might use, the kind of people that you might follow online, the kind of spaces that you might post in. So it's a really, really important place to start. What spaces might your audience already be engaging with online? How can you start to be in those spaces as well? So I'm going to give you a little example of what an audience map looks like on the next slide. So this is something we did last year when we were doing building our social media campaign for the What Next Summit. So we wanted to really map and understand the different people who were in our audience. So you can see we had a big post-it note that was transition group members, and we were also thinking about other groups of people in the general public that we might want to kind of communicate with, so people that are involved in mutual aid networks, people that may be involved in XR, Black Lives Matter, lots of different kind of networks and groups. And then we're also identifying key organizations that we might want to reach out to and build relationships with. So Fridays for the Future, youth movements or cooperative networks, trade unions. So we did a whole map to understand who our different audiences were. And then we broke that down and we thought, well, what are the best ways to reach out to transition group members? Who's in that demographic for us? Where might those people be online? And that might be a different thing that we needed to do well, how do we reach out to the people in Fridays to the Future? That's a younger demographic. They might be on a different social media channel. So really starting to get down into understanding who are the people that we want to communicate with and where might we find them online? What are the different places that they are already in? So we are going to jump straight into breakout rooms. We're going to break you into groups of 3. You're going to be there for about 15 minutes and you'll probably all be coming from different organizations and situations. So we are going to ask you to make your own audience map, but you can kind of be supporting each other, sharing ideas as you're going along, maybe discussing it a bit. So if you do have a pen and paper to do your audience map on, that would be great. Please grab that. If not, we will put a link to a Jamboard in the chat that you can use as an online space to make your map. That's what I use to make mine online. So in that time, say hello, introduce yourselves and your projects, and then maybe have a little discussion about the different audiences you might have. Start making your own maps and sharing ideas as you go along. So get the audience down first, and then maybe have a discussion about, well, where might we find these different people online? Like what might be the kind of platforms they're using or the kind of spaces they're in. It could even be like email lists or, different ways to reach out and connect.
Cool. So I'm going to speak a little bit about some of the ways that we try and connect with our audience on social media. I've sort of fallen into doing social media over a number of years by accident, but I manage channels for 4 different organizations. And I'm just going to show some examples of some of the principles and ideas and the things that we've found, or I've found work for us and we found work at Transition. And there can be a bit of a mysticism about social media and how to do it well and how to get something that goes viral. But what I think is really important is consistency and just constantly thinking about your audience and providing something of value to them. So we just want to show some examples and some ideas. now. So the first thing I think is, we've talked about who our audience is, but to really think before you write a post about them and what you're saying to them. Remember, they are non-expert. They are at different points on the journey in terms of the issues that you're working on. Some of them will be very gung-ho and very well informed. Others will be just finding out and just wanting to kind of explore this issue. So it's always really important to avoid jargon, to avoid acronyms, any insider speak that might make people feel they don't know what's going on and they don't know what that's about. They haven't got the knowledge to engage. And we also feel it's really important to avoid guilt, because we want people to understand the positive impact of the changes they can make, rather than feel guilty. Guilty tends to make people switch off and not engage, rather than making them come back for more. The other thing that's really important is to think about having a dialogue with your audience. Social media should not be a one-way channel of communication. It should be a place where you can talk to people, where you can hear their views as well as share information and share your views. So you want to start a dialogue, and you want to think about being in a relationship with them rather than just broadcasting information out. So think about what will connect with them. We had a great discussion in our breakout room about some of the things that people might be concerned about, where we would share concerns, and that being a good place to start from. I have a picture there of a little campaign that we ran with a project I work with in Bath. They run a library of things, and they have a little cargo bike that does deliveries. So they crowdfunded for this cargo bike. So that was a lovely way of involving the audience. And then they decided to let the bike be named by public vote. So we had this whole campaign on Instagram to get suggestions, and then we shortlisted and put those suggestions to a public vote, and it ended up being called the Flying Satsuma, which was a really colourful and fun name, and it was chosen by the public. So lots of people were kind of chipping in and being involved in that. I always think the most important thing about social media is to make it about people. If you're talking about issues, how does it relate to people? If you're talking about things people could do, how could they get involved? What can they do? What impact will it have on their lives? And that's because people relate to people. So they relate to pictures of people, and that's really important. But they also like to know what other people are up to. So on the right there, you can see some of these pictures are a bit fuzzy, sorry about that, but you can see a post there from the Belfast Tool Library, which is a project I'm involved in and which I manage the social media channels for. And one of the things we love to share most of all is the things that members have made with the tools that they have borrowed, because it shows what's possible. And for someone watching and thinking about joining or borrowing a tool, it makes it seem really clear like what other people are doing with those tools, and to be able to imagine themselves making something as well. So there's a lovely story there about Alistair, who made a little step stool for his son James to be able to stand up and help with the washing up, which I thought was a brilliant idea, having 3 kids who don't help with the washing up at home. So if we're trying to talk about people, what are the sorts of things that people respond to? We as people are really drawn to energy and emotions. So be positive, be lively, be enthusiastic, be hopeful. It's okay to be excited. We don't need to be too formal in social media. It's an informal channel. So it's great to kind of show your enthusiasm for the projects that you're working on. We're sensory people. So it's okay to be evocative, to paint a picture, and a picture of what you're working towards, what things could be like, not just getting across information. People want to be and feel part of something. So invite them in, talk about we, show them behind the scenes, be friendly, make them feel part of it, part of the project, and they will be drawn towards that and they'll want more. And we respond to people more than statistics. Like a statistic can be useful to sort of surprise people, to show people the impact of what you're doing, but make the statistic about people. And I have another example there from Belfast Tool Library. We have loads of amazing stats about what people have borrowed. But again, we're trying to make it about what does that mean for real people? So after 8 months of being open, if people had gone and bought all the tools that they had borrowed, it would have cost between them £10,000. So we can show the impact on people with our statistics. It's really tempting when you have loads of really amazing stuff to say about your project. Maybe it's multifaceted, maybe there's loads of different things going on, to try and cram everything in to every post. And I was reminded of this recently because we've been promoting this summit, and there are 33 sessions. There are loads of great themes, amazing speakers. There's so much to say about it. But I posted this picture on Facebook of one of our speakers next week, who is talking about growing in containers, container growing, vertical growing. And he had this amazing picture of growing things on his windowsills, and a lovely quote there about how he got the idea for starting up this organization, or this website called Vertical Veg, and how wonderful it would be if, when he was cycling around London, everywhere he saw balconies and rooftops and concrete spaces filled with herbs and edible flowers and fruit. And I posted that picture and talked about him. So just talked about one very tiny aspect of the summit. And this post went insane. It got 25,000 people saw it, and almost 2,000 clicks. Like, we've never had a post like it. And it was a reminder to me to not try and say everything all at once. Put one thing in and build on that. Make that the way in, for people. And sometimes it's the small, particularly with social media, sometimes it's the small detail that people latch onto. And then you can bring them into the wider conversation, rather than trying to get the whole of the wider conversation in, because that's overwhelming. So that was just a really good lesson for me recently as well. Yeah, think about building up a picture of your work or your project or your group over several posts or tweets. You don't have to say everything in one go, and that's much easier for people to digest. And sometimes it can be a challenge to think about how to get more people into your content and make it more about the people. So here are just some examples. We can tell people's stories. So I'm involved in running a repair cafe in Belfast, and it can seem like it's very much about what we fix and how we fix it, but we always tell it in the context of, here was Joe who brought along his Hoover. It was not a happy Henry because it had sucked up something that had blocked the tube. So we tell that little repair story, and that explains what the whole project is about in that one story. Storytelling is very powerful for people, and we really connect with that. The second way is to show people, get people in your pictures as much as possible. And people looking happy is great, and people actively doing things rather than just all lined up. Sometimes show, don't tell. So that's a really good way of making your content more human. And the third thing is to quote people. Let's hear what other people have to say about your work, not just you. And that can be a really powerful way to kind of get people to think positively about what you're doing, because someone else is saying that it's a great thing. It was fantastic to be involved. I really enjoyed it. So the picture on the right is another little quote that somebody gave us at the repair cafe about these lovely people, and you get a cup of tea and it's a lovely atmosphere. And that person who just came along for the first time was describing it rather than us describing it. A picture always equals 1,000 words, and that's so true on social media. I rarely post without a picture because I think it's much more eye-catching. And here are some fun pictures from projects I've been involved with. Somebody super excited on the opening day of the Belfast Tool Library. When I look at that, I feel so much excitement about that project, just from that person's facial expression. So it's always really good to try and source a picture. The one on the right is a woman making a new flower bed at the sheltered dwelling for older people in her town. So again, it's a little bit, you stop and look at it because there's an older woman there with a pickaxe. I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of her. And so it catches the eye. Photos are also really important because they say who's welcome and who's involved. And this can be a challenge if you don't maybe have that diversity that you want yet. But by making sure that you're communicating, that families can come, that people of all backgrounds can come. For us in the tool library, we're always wanting to make sure that women feel comfortable, for example, coming into this space, because traditionally maybe they haven't felt so comfortable coming and working with large power tools. Maybe they've been made to feel that that's not for them. And so we're always really mindful that we get pictures of women in action building things at our tool library. pictures can also make that joy infectious, and that really draws people in. So just a few pictures again of fantastic smiles. Always really good when you get a picture like that to make the most of it, and it draws people in. It makes people want to be part of something because they see how much fun those people are having. But there's practical reasons for using pictures as well, and there's a couple of examples here of how, when you're thinking about social media, your posts are coming up in a stream with lots and lots and lots of other content, and you want yours to stand out. You want people to stop and go in and look and read and find out more. So a really colorful picture can do that. It stops people in their tracks. It makes them want to know more. People wearing pink jumpers is ideal, or indeed yellow jumpers, as I have on the other side. And you can see on the right hand side there, you can't read the text, but you can see that long line of Twitter feed. So there are a couple of pictures in it, both of which draw the eye. You can see the posts that have no pictures, like my eye just slides right over those. I don't even see them. But also the picture that's got the bright colors, that's the one that my eye goes to first and that I notice. So yeah, always think about pictures, and it can be a challenge. If you don't have an image, here are some suggestions about how you can handle that. You can use one from the last time. So if you're promoting an event that's coming up, obviously you maybe don't have pictures of the event yet because it's not happened. But if it happened last year, get a picture from your festival last year. And if you're doing an event, always think about capturing pictures, because you'll really want them the next time when you're trying to do something similar. So use one from the last time, use one from somewhere else. If you've got a space that you're going to hold the event in, you can put a picture of the venue up, maybe with some people getting it ready or something like that. You can source free pictures at Pixabay, Flickr. There are other sites where you can get stock images. Obviously, you can't get your people in your group in. It's a second best option, but I think it's better than having no picture. And so think of something colorful and eye-catching that tells the story about what you're trying to do. So another example from the tool library, in the autumn, we were trying to say if you need to borrow leaf blowers or hedge trimmers or whatever to sort your garden out, beautiful picture of autumn leaves. And your third option is to make a simple graphic. Canva.com is a great platform for making really easy graphics. There are loads of templates on there. You can get a free account, which has many of the features, and you can make something really simple that again just catches the eye as people go past. And I think I'm going to pass back to Rhiannon.
Great, thanks, Chris. Brill, if you could pop us on to the next slide. Great. So what we're going to move on to now is talking about transition on social media. Many of you will be coming from transition groups or from similar kind of community focused groups. And it's a question that I've been getting quite a few times when I've been doing support sessions with groups recently, kind of asking, okay, well, what are the kind of easy ways that we can talk about transition? What are the kind of key words or things that you would focus on when you're doing, communications and social media? So it is something that I've thought about a lot being in this role. But before I share some of my tips and ideas, I wanted to do a bit of crowdsourcing from the room, from all of you. So I'm going to pop this Menti link in the chat. And what I want you to do is just to click on the link, hopefully it's going to work, and just to put in to the Menti the 3 top words, I think it's 3 to 5 words, that you would associate with transition network, transition groups, transition movement. What comes to your mind? What do you think are the key words and things that you would focus on and prioritize? So we're going to crowdsource them from you, and then we're going to have a look at them on the screen together. So really interesting to see the words that are coming up here. So right in the middle there, really huge, we've got community, which 100% makes sense to me. We've got hope there, that's really nice to see. Change, future, positive, inspiration, permaculture, sustainability. So those are the kind of big ones in the middle, and I can see smaller ones around the together, middle class, environment. Yeah, passionate. So yeah, really interesting to see the kind of common words that you associate with transition, and yeah, also that there's some strongly held kind of collective values there as well around hope and community and change and sustainability. Great, so if we can go back to the presentation. It's always fun, Zoom and tech. Moving between different things. Cool and brilliant. So we wanted to set you a little challenge here. We want you to, this is just on your own, we'll give you a few minutes to do it, thinking about some of the words that came up there. Could you try and write a short tweet to communicate what transition is about? So tweets have about 180 character limit on Twitter, which I'm actually not sure how many words that is exactly.
280, yeah.
Yeah. So using some of those words that came up in the Menti diagram, or, you know, also your knowledge and understanding of transition, try and write us a brief, short tweet that you would use to, if you wanted to kind of let people know, you know, promote and share the idea of transition. Chris and I have done some already that we kind of separately did a few days ago to share, so we'll share ours afterwards. But yeah, I would love to take this chance to just get you to get your thinking caps on and try and draft a short tweet. So we'll give you a couple of minutes. We can maybe pop some music on in the background, Maria, and
I'll just pop the Menti back up in case people want to draw on the words there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, we'll share that screen, put the music on for a few minutes, and then we can see if there's any brave souls that might share what they've come up with. All right, I'm just going to start reading a few that are coming in. One from Jessica: transition is a network of communities who turn hope into action for a sustainable future. Nice. What else have we got? James: transition is everything: food, health, energy, travel, life. Great. From Rose: growing is sustainable. And it means your transition town needs you to join the big change for better communities. Nice. Great ones coming in here. Transition Black Isle: transition is working together with your community for hope and change in the climate emergency. Great. Loads of really good ones coming in. Really enjoying reading them. Thank you for sharing them, everyone. And yeah, feel free to keep popping them in the chats, because there's something that we can all use as we're moving forwards and doing social media around this area. Cool. If we can have the slideshow back up, Chris, that'd be awesome. From Amy: do you have big love for your community and the earth? The Transition Network is a web of knowledge sharing and community care, making the beautiful future possible today. Get involved. Lovely, Amy. Wonder if we'll fit into 280 characters. That's always the challenge with Twitter. I'm
a bit embarrassed to share ours now, Rhiannon.
I know, they've done way better ones than us, Chris. Cool, right, well, we will show ours because everyone's sharing theirs. So here are the two that we had drafted. So anxious about the state of the world and who's going to fix it. Right now, communities are working together to build a better world, starting in their own backyard. It's showing what's possible, giving us a glimpse of a hopeful future. This is transition and everyone's welcome. And then the other one: transition groups build the world we want to see in the here and now. We take practical action to make our communities more sustainable and socially just. We are proactive and positive. We know that together we are stronger. We build community and connection on the local level. So yeah, hopefully that's given you a good practice or some idea of the kind of ways that we can talk about transition on social media. And on the next slide, I'm just going to also share some of the top tips. So for me, and it will be different things for all of us, but I think this is here and hopefully and experienced in the values and the approach that transition has, particularly when you're trying to share with people what makes a transition group unique and different to, you know, other sorts of community groups taking action and trying to make change happen. These are the kind of things that I focus on in our communication. So it's positive, proactive, and practical. It's about building the alternative we want to see in the here and now, not waiting for others or asking permission, coming together and doing. There's a focus on community and the collective rather than individual change. You saw that come up in the Menti community was the big word. The how we do things isn't as important as what. In transition, there's this very important balance between the inner and the outer, and that change needs to happen, you know, alongside each other. And then this narrative is that it's about building resilient and sustainable local communities. That's something I'm often coming back to again and again in the communications, or when we're working with the press to talk about what the transition movement focuses on. So yeah, I hope that that's helpful, particularly for those of you in transition groups, to get a bit clearer maybe on what the kind of specific focus of transition movement and groups is. So I'm going to move on to talk just briefly a bit more broadly about talking about climate change in general, not just within the transition context. But first, what we're going to do is show you a little video from a woman called the Garbage Queen on TikTok. We don't use TikTok, and I would only encourage you to use it if you already feel pretty confident making videos, but it is something that a lot of the younger generation are using to communicate about climate change. It's an interesting challenge because you have such a short amount of time that you can use in a video. So we wanted to share this video with you as an example of communicating about climate change in a brief video. And after watching it, well, whilst you're watching it, think about, do I like this? What works about how she's talking about it? What doesn't work? And maybe we'll share some thoughts, putting hands up or in the chat afterwards, just to have a little discussion around, okay, what do you think about this approach in terms of communicating about climate change?
If governments and energy companies were serious about solving the climate crisis, they would cancel all new fossil fuel projects. Because the most recent UN climate report said that if we want a shot at limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we cannot expand fossil fuels. But we all know they won't do that unless they're forced to. So how can you help with that? Make sure you vote for candidates in elections this year that support climate action. A great way to check is to see if they've signed the Green New Deal pledge. Switch to low carbon forms of transportation like public transit, electric vehicles, walking, or biking. Ask your local governments to commit to electrifying their fleets and getting energy for their buildings from renewables. Participate in protest and other climate activism events in whatever way you can. Install solar panels and/or a heat pump in your home if you own one. Eat a more plant-based diet and/or get your food from more local sources, including starting your own garden. And get your friends and family to do the same. At the end of the day, do whatever is affordable and accessible to you. I understand not everything on that list is, because it certainly isn't for me, so don't feel guilty if you can't do more. If governments and energy companies were serious about solving the climate.
Great, thanks, Maria. Got there in the end. Any thoughts on that video? Did you like it? What do you think worked? What maybe didn't work? Either raise your hand and we can hear from some other people, or pop your thoughts in the chat if you feel more comfortable doing that infomercial. Yeah, any other thoughts there? I'm just trying to scan to see if there's any hands anyone wants to share. Suzanne's got your hand up. Do you want to unmute yourself and share any thoughts?
It was very fast. I know they're meant to be fast, but she didn't do anything else except stand there and point her finger at me. So I felt confused.
Interesting.
Like, I know there are a lot of things, but could you do something else?
Yeah. So for you, the kind of the speed and her just standing and talking didn't make it such a successful video.
No. Sorry.
Any other thoughts? Just scanning for hands. Don't think I can see any hands coming up. What have we got in here? Too fast, too edited. Yeah. Would it be interesting to people who aren't interested already? Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. And again, I think this comes back to the kind of the audience that you're trying to engage with and the kind of types of content that people are used to watching. So people who are on TikTok a lot are really used to just seeing really quick content in videos. So that might be something that the younger audience will find it easier to engage with. That video got a lot of engagement, a lot of views. I think there was around 7,000 views, around 300 comments. So clearly she is doing something well there to get that kind of intake. But again, that's not something that might work for other people or other audiences, as you're saying, Suzanne. Might feel a bit quick or a bit more like a list, and of course you might want to mix it up by trying to fit other things in your video. I think the thing with TikTok is because it's such a short amount of time, you will often just see someone standing and talking like that, but that might not be your medium, and there are many other mediums and channels to use. So we sort of wanted to bring that there for a little bit of debate and discussion around different platforms, which I think, no, that's not quite what we're moving into yet, is it, Chris? It will be what we're moving into. Cool. So just some final other bits on talking about climate change more generally. Thank you, Chris. So I guess just a few top tips on the framing. So a few years ago, an organisation called the Public Interest Research Centre went away and did quite a big research project on thinking about the best ways to talk about climate change when you're trying to engage the public in this topic. So here's the kind of top tips that they came up with. Some of them really do cross over with the way that we talk about transition, but I wanted to have this broader framing around climate change as well. So the first thing is to start local and end global. So people find it easier to connect to things that are happening in their local area, and that obviously is a thing that transition groups focus on. So linking to things that are relatable, that are happening locally, that connect to people's day-to-day lives, you know, and feel very real and relevant to people. But however, when you're doing that, to make sure that you are making the connection to the bigger global picture there, that this is something that's obviously not just happening in your community and that is, you know, connected to a bigger global scenario. Building hope, not fear. So this kind of links back to the guilt stuff. People don't respond well if they're feeling guilty and afraid. It kind of creates a sort of shutdown response. And so whilst we can't obviously avoid the difficult and scary realities of climate change, it is really important in your communications to focus on the hope and the kind of proactive and what people can do, and here's how you can take action and get involved. Make sure that affected groups have voice and agency. So if you're talking about something that's happening in your local area, make sure you're getting quotes from the specific group of people that's happening to. If you're referencing something that's happening global, again, quoting and using examples and images of the people on the ground that is happening to, or things that are coming from their own voices and in their own words. Talk about redesigning systems as the real solution. So that's kind of you can sometimes focus on the kind of small day-to-day things that people do, but again, linking it to the bigger picture, understanding that global context and bringing that in. Talking about climate justice. So this is really important and something that we are trying to do in transition together much more, to always make sure that we are bringing in that kind of social justice framing to the climate discussion. Who's being impacted by this the most? Chris, I think there's black dots coming up on the presentation, so I wonder if you can take it away and then start the share again. And then there's the two don'ts there at the bottom, which I'm going to come back in a second, if our presentation is going to work. So great, that's working now. Be careful when you're using the emergency frames. So again, it's just being aware that can trigger quite a panicked response in people. This kind of so to use that sense of urgency, but maybe not all the time in your communications, because again, it can put people into kind of avoidant rather than engaging space. And then another thing that I think Chris mentioned earlier is just be really aware of using jargon. So like saying COP26 without explaining it, or using specific in terms and language that only people who are climate activists would understand. I also saw a really good example where rather than saying like climate activists are doing this, you say like we are taking action because. So always, instead of trying to create this us and them, always trying the we or our community, our parks, our gardens, our streets, to kind of create that collective sense together. Okay, great. I think that is that section done. And I'm going to hand to Chris on terms of looking at the different platforms and how you can use them effectively.
Great, thanks, Rhiannon. So yeah, we're just going to come on to some practicalities now. We've talked a lot about the big picture stuff and what we're really trying to do. We're going to skip over this fairly quickly. The slides will be available afterwards on Vive and also the recording. but we want to leave some time for questions and discussion. And if there's things you're specifically struggling with, we can see if there's experience in the room that we can help. So some general tips. There are many social media platforms, but I think a good starting point is to choose 1 or 2 platforms that work for you and also your audience, and to do them well, because sometimes organizations, particularly small community organizations that don't have a lot of people and a lot of capacity, they try and do everything and they spread themselves really thin, and then none of the platforms are really managed to the best impact. So choose 1 or 2 that work for you and start there. Understand each platform. We'll say a little bit about some of the most common ones in a moment, and tailor your content to be effective on those platforms. So it's okay to use similar messages or similar kind of content on the different platforms, but take a moment to stop and say, how am I going to make this work best on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram or TikTok? It's great to be responsive and conversational. Don't just talk about yourself, talk about other things that are happening, other organizations, other groups and working in a similar field. Follow other people who are, again, working in the same area, and then tag them in posts, share their stuff, and hopefully people will do the same for you. It's all about building relationships, and then you'll reach other audiences that way. Another way to reach other audiences is to join in with relevant conversations that are happening. So maybe in your local area, there's chat about, different cycle routes or whatever. Join in with those conversations, add your perspective, start talking about, well, what if we had cycle lanes that went everywhere? What if we did things a bit differently? And you will bring other people who are already interested and passionate and part of that conversation into your conversation too. Set a tone and a personality. Think of your channel as being a person, and what are you like? Are you friendly? Are you somebody people want to have a chat with in the pub? Are you approachable? And try and keep that tone consistent throughout what you do. Thinking about the specific channels, so Facebook is one that people have different feelings about. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Facebook. It can be really tricky. It can be really tricky to get your message out. But at the same time, 66% of the population, spelt wrongly, sorry, but 66% of the population are on there. 48.5 million people in the UK have an account, and 44% of the population visit every day. So if we want to talk to them, we need to be there in that space. It's really good for creating groups, which can work really well for your community project as well, because then it's more dynamic, more conversational. People are part of it. It's not just about you putting stuff. Other people can post content too. So it's great to become part of the community, to join and tag and participate in other groups. Algorithms can be a real pain, especially on pages. So a page is more of a kind of public facing platform for your project rather than a group of people that are involved in something. And algorithms can be really tricky. So you might have really brilliant content and it doesn't get posted as widely as you'd like. Vary the format of posts. I think that's one thing that helps with algorithms. Always use a picture. Experiment with video. I think video can go both ways a little bit on Facebook. Ask questions, start conversations. I think if people see a lot of your content looks similar, they'll skip right on over. It looks like they've seen it before, and that will affect your engagement. Twitter is another very popular channel. A lot of people are on that, 19 million users in the UK. Twitter's for bite-sized chunks, quick announcements, events. You can use it to link to longer pieces. It's newsy and conversational. You can see a little profile of who's on there, quite a young demographic. A lot of people under 40. So the best way to use Twitter for your projects is to find popular hashtags and use them on your posts. But I would also say, think about what local hashtags are popular, because you're wanting to reach people in your local area. It's not just about reaching anybody that has a repair cafe. It's about reaching the people who are in your area who might like to repair things. So like hashtag what's on Bath would be one that we would use in Bath Share and Repair to find Bath residents that are looking for events. Tag other people and projects involved in your work. Again, join relevant conversations. Follow other people in interesting accounts and then share their stuff, and hopefully people will start doing the same for you. And again, be responsive and conversational. Don't just talk about yourself. Instagram, very big platform, 34 million users in the UK. And again, quite a young profile. Instagram is picture-led. Beautiful pictures work really well. It's a bit more reflective space. Frequency of posting matters less. It has less of a, it can have, with Facebook, you need to consider how often you post rather than putting too much up. That matters less on Instagram. So there's two different ways that you post on Instagram. Posts are there forever, and you can create a lovely collection of posts. Stories are only there for 24 hours. So it's more immediate, it's more intimate, it suits behind the scenes content, making your audience feel part of things. Hashtags are a key tool for Instagram. So a lot of your audience will find you through hashtags. And so see what's being used locally, if those are the people that you are trying to reach. And I don't know if you've had the chance to go on to Vive yet. Vive is a platform that we are working to create. There's nearly 200 people on it at the moment. And it's sort of like our own little social network without the clutter and the noise and the advertisements and the pain of algorithms. But it's for us to connect with each other really rather than the general public. So it's a space for people working on community-led change to come together, to share and collaborate, a bit like a virtual hive. That's where the name came from. So it's a great place to share the struggles you're having with your projects, to share the successes you're having. It might inspire other groups. There's a space called Growing Transition on there, and that's a great place to talk about getting the word out, engaging the public, how your group is getting on, and to share the ups and downs there. So I hope you'll jump on and let us know what you think. We've just launched it last month, and during this summit is really the first time we're trying it out. So we'd really love to hear how people are finding it. And I think that's all we want to say to you, but we would be really happy to hear your questions or have them in the chat, or I'll hand back to Rhiannon to manage that.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so we've got 10 minutes or so, and we wanted to just open the space for questions there if anyone's got any specifically. So either raise your hand and we'll come to you to share, or if you feel more comfortable, please pop your question in the chat and then I can read that out and we'll try and answer any questions that you might have. Just scanning the screen to see if anyone's got anything. Wendy, I can see you've got your hand up there. Yeah,
just very, very briefly, one platform that I've personally found extremely useful, especially for a slightly older audience and very female orientated, is Pinterest. And it's not one that you might readily think of, but actually it works really, really well, especially with the idea of putting up images and quotes and ideas like that. So.
Yeah, another one that works really well at local level is Nextdoor. So if you're running local projects and things like that, it's not one that we use because we're like a national, communicating nationally, but for like an individual transition group, Nextdoor can be really useful. I think it's about the starting point of this discussion this morning is who is your audience and who are you trying to reach and where would we find them? So you're absolutely right, Wendy, if that's the kind of community that you're trying to reach with your project, then that's the place to go. Yeah, I see Lynn has her hand up as well.
Yeah, let's go to Lynn. Thanks, Wendy.
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering with Facebook, you're not meant to post too much, not meant to post too little. Like, what would you kind of recommend, like a daily post or?
It depends, which is an unhelpful answer, but it depends what you've got going on. So if you're having a really busy time and lots going on because there's a big event on or something, you can get away with posting more often. But between times, I tend to post 3 times a week, 3 to 4 times a week. And if a post is doing really well, I almost leave it and let it run. But I know that the next post is going to get a bit of a bump because the last post did well. But it's a bit of an art rather than a science, I think. And you can Google and get all kinds of advice and people will say post lots, and Facebook will tell you to post lots, but I don't think that's effective. I think that's what Facebook wants you to do. in my
Okay.
experience.
And it is so up and down with Facebook. I mean, we'll feel like we're on a roll and it'll be going well, and the posts are getting more and more engagement, and then there'll just be a dip. Like, I think it just be like quite kind to yourself in the process of using Facebook, because sometimes like it can be like just quite unpredictable and hard to understand the ways that it will change. But yeah, we certainly know that in a busier time like this, you know, with the summit, we are posting every day. We wouldn't usually post that much, as Chris says, 3 to 4 times a week. And also, I think the thing with Facebook to know is that like you also really can't leave it for a long time, because it will really, really deprioritize your posts. So you do want to have that regularity of like at least once a week, really, because yeah, the longer you leave it, the kind of algorithm will go down. So it is, yeah, Facebook is it's a difficult beast to work with. I'd say it's one of the hardest of the platforms, actually.
And if there's certain, sorry, another question, but just on the Facebook thing, is there certain, people say there's different times that you should post things so they get seen better, but I guess if everyone's doing that, then maybe it doesn't work.
That's right, exactly. So I think play around with your times and see what works and what gets a good response, because like I've spoken to Reem at our Scottish networks, and she always posts at tea time at 6 o'clock and gets great engagement. That doesn't work for our channel. I don't know why. So I think you need to try and find out when your people are on. But I often post first thing in the morning, or I post like about 9 o'clock, or I post just before lunchtime, because I'm thinking about when are people using Facebook. They're going on in their lunch break and having a sneaky look at their desk, or they're checking it out when they first get to their desk or on their way to work. Or when they're traveling home. So, and also it depends on what you're talking about, because if you're talking to people who might be looking because it's part of their job, you'll want to post during the day. If you're talking to people that this is a voluntary activity for, they will be looking outside of their normal working hours. So thinking about that is really important.
Yeah, and I would say that's quite an interesting difference with Twitter and Facebook, that like Twitter is not, I mean, you will have people on there who aren't on their day job, but I think you'll get more like professional users on Twitter. So there'll be like much more engagement during the day, and then you'll get people using Facebook in a more personal way. But again, I think it is about knowing who your audience is and the times, you know, if it's a working audience, then those kind of times Chris mentioned are going to be useful. But I don't know if it's young people or something else, then they might be online at different times. So it is understanding that as well. And Jessica's just put in the chat, you can see in your insights when your audience is online, which sounds like a helpful tip. I've got another question here, Chris, but did you want to say something else?
I just wanted to answer a question that we didn't, hasn't been asked, but I think which is important, and that we didn't cover in the presentation, which is about accessibility. And just to say that you can, if you put a picture up, obviously if somebody is visually impaired and using a screen reader, they can't see that picture, but you have the option when you upload the picture, if you go to edit, you can add a description, and it's really good to take the time to do that and just put a little line or two about what's in the picture. And if it's a graphic, just to say the graphic reads, and then type the text, because a screen reader can't read the text, which if it's in an image. And on Twitter, because the character limit is so short within the tweet itself, one handy thing to remember is, as well as adding your alt text to your picture, your little description of what's in the picture, you can also tag people in a photograph, and that they don't have to be in the picture for you to tag them, but you can, if you don't have enough characters within your tweet to tag all the different accounts you would like to, you can tag them in the photograph. You can tag up to 10 accounts. So it's just another way of being able to get your tweet in front of other audiences. Though bear in mind that they get a notification every time that gets retweeted. So that might be annoying for those audiences. So you just want to think about who you tag and why, and not annoy them.
Great. Cool, thanks, Chris. And so I want to come to, Sarah's asked an interesting question about dealing with negativity, but maybe just a quick one on the question that's just been asked about scheduling posts in advance and how that affects algorithms. What would you say on that, Chris?
I've seen no effect on algorithms, and a lot of this, so you can schedule within Facebook, and you can use Facebook to schedule Instagram posts. You can also use, there are other platforms outside of the social media accounts that you can use to schedule, one called Later, which you can use to schedule tweets, which is very handy, a free one, and there's lots of paid for ones as well. I haven't seen an impact on scheduling. in terms of algorithms, and it allows you to get that sweet spot if you figured out the best time that works for your audience, and that's not necessarily the handiest time for you to post. It's really handy to be able to use scheduling. And also, if you've got limited time and capacity in your group because you've got someone who's doing social media as a volunteer, scheduling is such a great way to just write a couple of weeks worth of content in one go, get it all scheduled. But the thing you need to remember is social media requires that dialogue and that dynamism. So don't just schedule it, leave it, go away and come back in 2 weeks. Schedule it, do all your thinking and your content generation in advance, but then keep a little eye so that you can be responsive to comments and that sort of thing. Make sure the schedules work and it's get posted where you thought at the right time.
Yeah.
Sam has just suggested another scheduling tool, buffer.com.
Yeah. And I think that thing about being responsive is really important, that you can't sort of, you need to be there responding to posts, and obviously also like responding to context, like things change during the week, or, so making sure that you are being responsive to what happens. We've only got 5 minutes left, so I'll just answer really quickly a big question, which is about in terms of responding to negativity, particularly on Twitter. I mean, we could have a long discussion about this. I think for us, particularly as we are an organisation that supports a network, I would be quite careful about, I wouldn't share like a personal opinion in a response to someone who's being like negative or critical. I'll often try and work out whether it's like a bot or like a troll or someone just, trying to be purposely inflammatory. And in which case, if that's the case, I will ignore it and not engage, because they kind of want you to engage. If it's a kind of valid criticism or like that's engaging in conversation from an actual person in the network, I will try and kind of like listen to and then like respond. It will sort of really depend on what it is, but like we will defend our values if that's necessary, but I think I would try and share it in quite a closed way, so not like trying to lead to further discussion, but sort of saying, we can see that's your opinion on that. As you know, social justice is really important for us in these areas, so we wouldn't behave in that way. Or I don't know, it's hard to know without the context, but I think you don't, you sort of want to be able to shut that, like you don't want to get into a big fight online. Genuinely speaking, I don't think that's very helpful. And we as an organisation that represents the transition movement, we don't have the right to speak on behalf of others. And if you're a group, you probably don't really either, because it's a collective, unless you're kind of agreeing on, together, like this is what our line is going to be on these various things. So I think, engage with that with caution, I would say, and don't fan the flames, basically.
You can also use a message, like a direct message, to engage rather than add further fuel to the fire on Twitter. And I think politeness and asking more, but being open to dialogue, but not too open, it's quite a tricky balancing act. But also, I think don't anticipate massive amounts of negativity. I think occasionally there are, particularly if you're talking about vexed local issues, and like local things people can get very, very animated about planning and about different proposals. But I think people will also feel a massive amount of goodwill to the work you're doing and to volunteers and to people who are trying to make their community better. So don't anticipate a massive amount of negativity.
Yeah, great. All right, we're going to draw things to a close there. But thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope that it was useful and that there's some kind of tips and insights you can take away from there.